From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, The Zoomer, hosted by Marissa Lennox.
That was the incredible Daniel Vnukowski, master pianist and host of the Classical Jukebox on the New Classical FM. Welcome to the Zoomer. I am Marissa Lennox. Today we're looking at the power of music, how it taps into memory, shapes emotion, even helps us heal. We know instinctively that certain pieces bring comfort or lift our spirits, but why? We'll put that question to musicians, neuroscientists, and psychologists. And we begin with Daniel. Daniel, you have an ability to bring a piece of music to life in a way that can move people so deeply. What is it about music that taps into emotions so powerfully? What do you think it is?
That's a great question, and it's my joy to bring this music. I'm only the the middleman in between, but the music itself has this inherent quality that we want to hear again and again. So this is a very frequent request. It's the Raindrop Prelude, and I remember doing a school show once somewhere in New Brunswick, when I did Piano 6, and there was a class that was very unsettled. People were throwing airplanes during the class, and they were looking at their phones, and they didn't really have much interest in what I really had to say. So what I usually do is I play some Super Mario Brothers, and and that'll at least get a little bit of their attention. But I found nothing would help with this particular school. So as soon as I played this work, all of a sudden there was this quiet. There was this.
It was calming.
It was just a little calming. It's like for a second they could put that phone down and just realize there's a blanket of sound here. They're somehow transported.
Well, and I feel that, and
place.
I felt that, Daniel, honestly. And I know that you get requests all the time on your radio show for songs that bring comfort, or will put someone to sleep, or will put someone in a better mood. So let's start with comfort. What is it that makes a song comforting? Maybe you could play actually a few bars.
Sure. Yeah, well, just that key we had right here was Chopin's favorite key, so he often reserved his most beautiful moments. Nocturnes. There's something about it. It's actually
ethereal.
It's ethereal, exactly. And it lies very naturally with the fingers, so it's much more preferable than the key we all start learning piano with, which is C major.
Right.
Because you can easily fall in the cracks, right? You're always dealing with the white keys, whereas in this one, there's a dreamy quality. So you have this floating like left hand, and it's that mood right there from Rachmaninoff. There's already that, you're just drawn right from the first bars.
And there's a concept of tension and release when it comes to music that's comforting. Can you sort of explain that for us?
Sure. A great example of that would be another frequent request we get. Speaking of tension, the Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 2, because the music starts actually quite dark, dramatic, with these tolling bells, a lot of dissonance. And then in the second movement, he starts with that darkness, that minor chord, but through a series of wonderful harmonies, which reach their apex right about here. You felt how that tension kind of grew, and here we have that first kind of release for a little bit, and then again, a little more tension, and here comes the release. And here's where the sunlight comes out of the clouds. And then a little more tension again, but not as much as in the first movement. Chromatic tension, and again, release. So I think that kind of corresponds with our own way of processing trauma or emotions, painful emotions. They provide tension, and then our brain has this natural rhythm. There's the resolution, and the music in this sense becomes like our ally, our very good friend.
For someone who is dealing with grief and with trauma, how important is the minor key?
Oh, very much, very much. Well, the whole Rachmaninoff loved the minor key, and the minor key. I think we want to feel the presence of the underdog somehow, and the minor key is that underdog in music. The major key is always happy and joyous, it's sunny, and the minor key is sometimes what we relate to, what we really need when we need that ally, that friend in music. A great example of that is Władysław Szpilman, who was imprisoned in the Warsaw Ghetto. If anyone saw the movie Roman Polanski's The Pianist, how he plays that dark minor key ballad. That's a minor key. You feel that sighing, the heaviness. And that music saves his life. When a German soldier hears that, he spares his life. And so they bonded in a way. Imagine a Nazi and a Jew binding at that one moment. And when he was imprisoned in the Warsaw Ghetto, Jews were forbidden from playing this beautiful music that I played at the start, Chopin. They were not allowed to touch it. So Władysław Szpilman wrote a work in the style of Chopin, in the style of a mazurka, which is in the minor key, and offered a kind of sense, a sense of relief to other, prisoners at the time. And the music is a sort of resilience. It provides hope, and again, it has that kind of undulating tension
and for
and
someone
resolution.
who's dealing with grief and for trauma, that's what they want to hear. That's what they're looking for.
Right.
For someone who is perhaps, I know you have a Sunday night show, looking to wind down and to go to sleep, what are some of the melodies or the tunes you might play?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Bach, the Goldberg Variation, because Bach wrote it for a count, an ambassador, who was visiting Count Kaiserling, and he was always had these bouts of insomnia during his trips. And there's something simple about that that raindrop prelude we heard. The harmonies are quite simple, playing with 5 and 1. And in here, in the Bach-Goldberg Variations, we also have a simple progression of harmonies. Almost sounds like a Beatles song right there.
Yes.
Or a favorite hymn of some kind. And, that would be quite too simple. That would be too simple for a great work of art. So what he does is he adds this beautiful line on top with a series of embellishments. There's a mordent. And another line opens up right there. We heard that inner voice. So that beautiful counterpoint makes it so much more interesting for the listener. But he doesn't forget the minor too when he wants that real repose. This is often called the Black Pearl. Very chromatic. Variation 25. It goes very deep into the depths of creativity.
Well, let's end on an uplifting note. What are some of the melodies or bars you might play for someone looking to have their spirit lifted?
Sure. In terms of just infectious joy, that kind that grabs you in 1 or 2 bars, I love to turn to the music of Mozart. He has this, if anyone has seen the movie Amadeus, you'll think of that ha ha ha, that laugh of Mozart. That's all in the music, that flirtatious laughter. He was having fun. He loved surprising twists of plot. He was a master of drama, of theater. And so you look at something like the opening to The Marriage of Figaro, and
I know you mentioned that was one of your favorites.
Oh, I love to play it. Anytime somebody phones in and they just say, play something joyous, fun that will, make me laugh. It seems like that's a great one. I can't find the music, but it's
by memory.
has a little bit of that fanfare, and even right there, how he's playing with the pauses, right? There's that little twist of, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
Where's he going with it? So it's a master of that kind of
surprise.
surprise.
That's a great note to end on. Daniel, thank you. He is actually sticking around, and he'll be performing a little bit later in the show. But up next, a fascinating study from McMaster University on the connection between music and the brain. Don't go away. That's, of course, ZNews videographer Maximilian and his brother Theodor Aoki performing the classical take on the contemporary hit Counting Stars. Now, neither of you pursued music in university. You're actually both engineering grads, is that right?
That's right.
Which is kind of cool. I often think of the creative world and the academic world as being distinct. In fact, you participated in a study at McMaster University that suggests there may be more in common than we might think. Tell me about it.
Well, the amazing thing about being connected into the science world as being musicians, McMaster has the only lab of its kind in the world, which combines performance with audience interaction and study and EEG and vision. And it is an incredible facility. We got the chance to be part of a study out of the live lab, and that's something that we can show you right now.
We're super excited to actually be able to show off the capabilities of our acoustic environment with Versacello, who's an awesome local music group. So basically what I'll be equipping you with today will be an EEG cap or electroencephalography cap. And basically the way that works is we're going to get electrodes really close to the surface of your scalp and pick up the really fine electromagnetic waves that are produced by your brain working. And at the same time, what we're also going to look at is your eyes. And so we're going to equip you with a pair of glasses that are equipped with 3 cameras, one for each eye and then one in the center. And they have a machine learning algorithm that's going to tell us exactly where you're attending to during your playing. And what we're interested in is looking at the interaction between your eye movements and how that actually influences what's going on inside your head, your brain waves. Should be able to answer some really cool preliminary questions to help inform future studies as to what we want to do here.
I did want to point out, Max was saying, they get into this kind of this zone or this kind of blackout state. And I'm not sure if any of you noticed on Theo's EEG there, but there were some pretty solid alpha waves while he was playing. And something tells me that that's actually another phenomenon that we're really interested in here in the live lab called flow. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the flow state. I'm not going to get too far into it, but that was really cool to see. I was pointing it out to Susan at the back. I was like, whoa, look at that. One of the things we find really interesting here in the live lab during our concerts is that when we analyze audience members' heart rates, their heart rates can synchronize. And same with what we call interbrain synchrony. So when we have EEG on people, we're kind of listening to what's going on inside their head, the electrical signals going on inside their head. And we find that their brains also have this form of synchronization going on. So there's these really fascinating fundamental principles to human nature that are so intertwined with music, and a lot of questions to be answered based off that can then be transcribed to all aspects of human life.
Okay, so that's very cool. And one thing that stood out to me is that while you were performing, your brain waves actually synced up. Now, I know you guys aren't the ones analyzing the data, but what do you think is going on there? And do you think the fact that you share DNA or are brothers had something to do with it?
It's an interesting question. We've been playing cello since we were 3-4 years old or so. But we've been brothers even longer than that.
That's true.
And so a lot of our relationship got brought into the music that we played. And then as we continue performing, we spend more time together. We develop a bond as brothers. And it becomes a positive feedback loop where it kind of becomes its own unique,
Even like as we're playing, I look over to Max and it's almost like looking in a mirror. And we get that sort of brotherly connection, musical connection. It all plays off each other.
That's really sweet. Do you bring engineering? I know that's your background. Do you bring engineering into your performance, into your music?
Definitely.
How?
One of the biggest things that you learn in an engineering degree is you have to problem solve your way out of things all the time. As a professional musician duo, we do a lot of work for, like, example, weddings, where things are in flux all the time, and maybe the timing of the bride walking down the aisle is completely different the day of than it was in rehearsal. And you have to be adept at take all the preparation that you've given, throw it to the wind, and try something. Go for it.
Final word to you, Theo.
Engineering music is more alike than different, I would say. It's all a lot of theory, but in the end, the practice and the practical results is what matter.
Very cool, very cool. Max, Theo, thank you so much. Before we go to break, what happens when brain activity itself becomes an art? Years ago, Dr. Mark Deutsch set out to explore that very question with a project called Portrait of Your Mind, transforming brainwaves into 3D digital art. And of course, Zoomer media boss Moses Znaimer was first in line to see how his brain responds to his two favorite genres, classical and rock and roll. Take a look.
Crank it up.
Ready now, go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoe. Well, you can do anything, but let me over my blue.
Okay, we're going to look at my brain. So we'll start with Wolfgang Amadeus. I'd say that brain is alive. Wow. And let's see what Elvis does.
Well, you can do anything, but let me over my blue suede shoe.
Actually, he looks a little calmer.
What you're looking at is basically currents. If you just look at them, you see the speed of change is astonishing.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Dr. Laurel, Trainor, professor of psychology, neuroscience, and behavior, and the director of the McMaster Institute for Music and the Mind. She's been at the forefront of research exploring how music shapes the brain and influences the way we think and feel. Dr. Trainor, it's great to have you on the program. Now, I know you've spent years studying how music affects the brain. Tell me a little bit about Live Lab. It's one of a kind in the world. What exactly happens there?
Well, first of all, it's a fully functioning concert hall, 106-seat concert hall. We hold many performances, but it's a research laboratory. So we can measure brain responses using EEG from the whole audience.
Just tell us what an EEG is. EEG
you just saw, actually, in the last clip. We put a net on people's head, and from that we can measure the electrical signals generated by neurons depolarizing and firing in the brain. I
asked Max and Theo why their brain waves seemed to sync up. What was going on there as they were performing?
But one of the powers of music is that, yes, we can feel emotions and as individuals, but music brings us together. Mm-hmm. And if you look across the world, most music making is done with other people. Most musical experiences are with other people. And even today, when we have recorded music, which is wonderful, we can listen to all kinds of things from everywhere, it still makes us feel connected with the people who wrote the music and with other people that are listening to it.
Well, and even if you think about a congregation or a church choir, someone sings the first note and the rest joins in key, there's a natural syncing up that happens. It's fascinating.
This is one of the things we're most interested in studying in the Live Lab. And so we can do it measuring the brain, but we can also do it measuring movements. So one of the equipment systems we have in there is motion capture, just the same way people use in making films. And so we can measure the minute movements that musicians make when they coordinate together, but also when the audience listens and when the audience syncs with each other, their movements sync. And so by studying these interactions, we can figure out how it is. For example, how do musicians play together? So how did those two cellists, Max and Theo, synchronize? If you think about it, if they waited to hear what each other were playing and then they played, it would be too late. And it takes the brain, a fraction of a second to generate the movements to play. So you have to predict what's going to happen next.
I know you've done some research on music and Parkinson's and how it helps people regain movement. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so one of the elements of music, as you know, is rhythm. And what happens in Parkinson's is that the parts of the brain that are rhythmically oriented, so our movements are rhythmically oriented, degenerate. They're the first ones that get affected. And so, as Parkinson's progresses, you have trouble walking, generating rhythmic movements. Well, music has rhythms. We now know from our studies of the brain that there's connections between auditory areas of the brain and motor or movement areas of the brain. In fact, the auditory areas use movement areas to create rhythms in music.
Wow.
So if you can play rhythms to people with Parkinson's, it creates a bypass straight from auditory to motor to help them generate movements and bypass those subcortical areas that are not functioning properly anymore. So rhythms and music is a really powerful tool to help people with Parkinson's.
All right, well, this has been so fascinating. We are going to pick this up in just a little bit, but before we do, let's hear another performance from Daniel Vnukowski.
I'm on my way to visit 97-and-a-half-year-old Marjorie Taft. For over 10 years, Marjorie has suffered from dementia. But even though she's lost some of her memories, she hasn't lost the one thing that is very important to her: her music.
Gray skies are gonna clear up, put on a happy face. I would say about 10 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with dementia, but before that, we could see that she was forgetting things. More recently, I think because she has musical stimulation, she hasn't deteriorated, which for someone at 97 and a half is pretty surprising.
What role does music play in your life?
Well, it's probably the most important thing. Well, I've always loved music. I used to sing before I could talk. I just go da 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 da, that kind of thing.
Marjorie was a piano teacher and still is. She's gonna teach me how to play. What song is it, Marjorie?
What would you like?
I think You're My Sunshine. That might take a little bit to get used to, but maybe I'll try the first few notes.
Sure.
No. What's next?
You'll be glad you decided to smile.
I'm happy.
Music makes you happy.
Oh, yes. I think the world would be very dull without it.
For her to be this age and to still be able to be joyful, that's a huge gift.
Marjorie's story showcases not only the power of your brain, but also the healing power of music. That's why I'm going to continue learning the piano thanks to Marjorie's teaching. In Toronto, I'm RJ Grubb for ZooMer News.
That's an incredible story. It does remind me of my own grandmother. Despite her dementia, she could recall every word to Only You or A Dream Is a Wish Your Heart Makes. So what is it about music that makes that possible? Let's bring in Maya Adut, certified music therapist, and Dr. Laurel Trainor still here with us. Maya, I'll begin with you. When we think of memory, we think of something that needs to be remembered, but there's something about music that can almost unlock that. How often do you see that in your practice?
I see it every day. Actually, that song was a great example, You Are My Sunshine. I remember the first time I did a music therapy session, I used that song. And I had a group of aging adults with dementia, and I remember seeing one person start tapping their toes, clapping their hands, who otherwise was unengaged. Then I saw someone who was non-speaking begin to sing the entire song. I saw another person begin to shed a tear and begin to share about the memories associated with that song. So those are just a few examples of what I get to see every day.
But for them, how does it affect them emotionally and socially? Apart from being able to recall words to a song, do you see a difference in their behavior and their demeanor?
Absolutely, and that's the most important part, right? We're improving their quality of life because music is able to create this connection, right? It creates a connection with themselves. Again, it kind of brings back this connection with the self, but also with their peers around them. Sometimes it's just a look at their neighbor beside them and a smile, or you see them singing along together or begin to dance together, get up and dance in the middle of the room. And oftentimes it's a connection with their loved ones. So when they have visitors or caregivers, children, grandchildren visiting, music can be that bridge and that connection.
It is fascinating, right? You think about people who can barely remember the names of his or her family members, but can sit down to a piano and play with ease. How does that happen, Dr. Trainor?
Well, I don't know if I can tell you exactly, but music is one of those things that is there through our lives. So infants react to music long before they understand speech. In fact, we now have studies in premature babies that show that from the time the cortical system responds to sound, which is about the third prenatal month, already the brain is encoding rhythms and pitches. And by the time infants are born, mothers are singing to them. So around the world, people sing to babies. So this is deeply ingrained in as the brain is developing. And sort of what comes in first is last to leave in the end.
But what does that tell us about how our brain is wired? Are there certain parts of the brain that remain intact forever that are not touched by a disease like dementia or Alzheimer's?
Unfortunately, no. But the strength of music is that it has connections to every part of the brain. So as the brain may be deteriorating, one connection may be less strong, another one is still there. So music has this ability, I think, to remain when other things are gone because there's so many pathways into the musical experience.
Absolutely.
All right, fascinating discussion. Maya, Dr. Trainor, thank you to you both. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back. Earlier, I had the chance to chat with Canadian icon Bruce Cockburn about his incredible career, the spiritual side of his songwriting, and how he's managed living with arthritis while still performing. Here's that conversation. Bruce, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much. Nice to be with you.
I'll just start by saying that it is a personal highlight of my career to be interviewing you. I knew your music at a very young age. My dad made sure of it. So, you know, you've had this incredible career. You are one of the legends. And we're talking about music today, and it really does have an exalted place in our society. It can lift our spirit. It can make us laugh. It can make us cry. There are incredible stories of people that cannot be reached by words, but remember songs from the past. And so I wanted to just start there to talk about the power of music and how it affects us. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, it does a few things. I mean, for one thing, music stops time while you're listening to it. And that in itself is a kind of healing. Offers a sort of healing principle that you're no longer captive to the clock and to the pressures of having to be somewhere, get something done, etc. Even if you're listening to music while you're doing something, it kind of has that effect. I mean, that's one kind of obvious thing, but I think it goes deep. There's some reason why people have wanted to sing and dance and react to music, create music from the earliest times on. You know, the earliest music that we have records or have information about is often related to religious worship or to some aspect of spirituality, which is another whole dimension to that.
I've heard a lot of artists talk about how they are a vessel for the song, that it comes from above, that there's some kind of a spiritual aspect when the lyrics come to them. I'm curious how it works for you, if there is that spiritual or deeper thing happening, or is it just sort of like, I got this great idea, I need to write it down as quickly as possible?
It's a little of both. There's no question that the songs, the ideas seem like gifts to me. I don't feel like I created them. I feel like I was given them. But once the idea comes, I don't get anything done if I don't get the idea. And I don't go chasing the idea. I did early on when I was first getting going. I thought, yeah, writers write, so I should be disciplined and write something every day and, keep the muscles working and everything. But at the end of a year of doing that, I found I had about the same amount of useful material as I would have if I just waited for the good ideas. So, for the last 50 years, more or less, I've been just waiting for the good ideas.
Well, you have these songs, these incredible songs, Rocket Launcher, Lovers in a Dangerous Time, and today they continue to be sung almost like anthems. When you were writing them, did you anticipate or expect the impact they might have and the longevity they would have?
No, I never really had much of an expectation about anything. I think I learned early on as a kind of loner kid that it's better to have no expectations.
Okay, so you're not thinking about the impact, but when you're pouring out this emotion onto paper, then is it cathartic for you? Is that therapeutic for you?
I feel like a bloodhound on the hunt when I'm writing a song. It's exciting for me to chase down ideas and to sort of pull these sometimes disparate ideas or sometimes a simple idea into some kind of presentable shape. And I mean, there's a couple of those on the most recent album even. I mean, it still goes on, but a song called When the Spirit Walks in the Room was one of those gifts where the song just was there suddenly. And really, it had to be written. When the Spirit walks in the room. There's another one there called Into the Now that's there was that similar kind of gift. It's like all of a sudden there's an element, maybe a simple phrase, or maybe a couple of lines, and then there's this feeling of energy behind that that wants to be expressed, and it just pushes the search for accompanying lines or accompanying images to go with that.
Breakers hit heavy on the sands of the Strand. Humans land hard on the border.
In those special moments, and those two songs, for instance, the music was right there also. It didn't require, a lot of searching to find the right musical field in which to put those lyrics.
It is so fascinating to hear about your process and the fact that after 5 decades, you're still continuing to write music. You're also you've spoken openly about dealing with arthritis. I'm curious how that process has evolved or changed, the process of creating music as you deal with something like that, which can be particularly difficult for a guitarist.
It's a pain, that's for sure. Not just in the hands, but the hands are the big issue. And so far I'm able to get away with it. Eventually, I guess, it's going to be a real impediment to playing the guitar. I'm not sure what will happen at that point, but I have had to change the guitar parts for certain songs because I can't quite execute them cleanly enough in the way they were written. But it's only been in a few cases that's been true so far. So, it's a wait and see.
Well, Oscar Peterson had arthritis as well, and he famously played with one hand, but his one hand was better than most people's 2 hands, and I am certain the same is true for you. All right, well, we'll have to leave it there. Bruce Cockburn, such a pleasure.
Thank you.
And that's it for us this evening. To get in touch, you can send us an email at comments@thezoomer.com. As always, a big thank you to my panel and to you at home. We'll see you soon. For now, it's time to zoom out.